So are you excited for our next speaker? So this is someone who has been chasing tornadoes for almost 30 years. Tony Laubach is a legend in his own right. He's incredible, and he's seen some of the worst and devastating tornadoes that we've seen in the past 3 decades. And he's going to talk to you about his career, the ups, the downs, and what it takes to sustain a 30-year career. So without further ado, Tony, get here on the stage.
You can hear me? Sweet. That's always the worst problem about going up and speaking in front of people, is relying on everybody else to make sure you look good. She said, my name is Tony Laubach, and I have essentially chased from Twister to Twisters, both movies, neither of which had an effect on why I did my career, but it's just kind of cool to think that I have survived the bookmark of both of these storms. I'll give you a little background on who I am, because a lot of you may not have a clue, and that's fine. I don't have a clue who I am either, but anything that has been done in storm chasing, I think at some point or another I've done. I've been chasing storms since my first tornado in 1997. I was a participant with Twistex for their entire duration of the project, which led us to Discovery Channel's Storm Chasers. I was on National Geographic. I made my debut on Women's Entertainment. That's pretty cool. Freelance video for nearly 20 years. I've worked at several TV stations as a full-time employee. I have freelanced for dozens of others across the country, and currently I work for the AccuWeather Network. I am a field reporter and meteorologist for them. So that's quite fun. We all have our start. Some of you guys probably experienced weather in some form that got you interested in this. Me, I was born with the disease, and that was something that started early on in life. I was scared to death of tornadoes. My parents had a book, and I wish I could remember what it was. It was just a novel that had a tornado on the cover, and tornadoes scared me so much as a kid, I threw away the book because I did not want it in the house. But I was always interested in natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, you name it, I was interested in it. And this is 4th grade me looking much happier with this grade card than I should have been, because I had a lot of C's on this. I played a lot of Super Mario Brothers in 4th grade. But this 4th grade kid spent all of his free time in the library of his elementary school reading encyclopedias on tornadoes, natural disasters. And I wanted to learn. It was something that fascinated me. But the inspiration came in 1991. Everybody here has probably heard of, if not remembers, the Andover, Kansas tornado. And that was the McConnell Air Force Base tornado. That was the one that was like, this is kind of cool. That was in 1991. The following year, the Weather Channel did a special called The Enemy Wind, where they focused on the Andover, Kansas tornado. But what was on the front end of that special was a segment done by storm chaser Warren Fadley. And it introduced me to the concept that people chase tornadoes for a living. And I thought, how cool is that? So 11-year-old me says, Mom, Dad, I want to do that. Sure, son, you go ahead and say that. So 6 years later, I did. I wasn't old enough to drive yet, so I had to con my dad into going out. And this was May 14th, 1997. I grew up in Ohio. We didn't have a lot of tornadoes then. But one day, I'm sleeping on a couch. My mom works for a traffic reporter for a station, and she did her work from home. She came in and said, hey, there's a tornado reported southwest of where we lived. My dad comes home from work and looks at me and he goes, you want to chase it? Now, this is a year after Twister. And of course, I'd always been interested in storm chasing. And I was like, duh, let's go chase this thing. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. So before we left, in my dad's Pontiac station wagon, I took a piece of tracing paper, drew a diagram of a supercell that was roughly to scale of the road map I was using. And I traced this paper where the supercell was, and I said, Dad, we need to be here in 30 minutes. And I said, because we're coming in from the north, we're probably going to run into hail. I sounded so smart. Well, we came in from the north, we came through some 1-inch hail, and when we emerged, first chase, first tornado. I thought, that was easy. There's nothing to this. Of course, my dad, who came out with me, did all the driving, and he, my parents were very supportive, but tornadoes, let's be honest, never had a problem after this. Never had a problem. So And oddly enough, I'm trying to look back and remember of the many tornadoes I've seen. I think this is the only time I've ever been in the passenger seat for a tornado. So, thus became the obsession. Well, as it turns out, I would not stay in Ohio another year. I moved in 1998, the middle of my junior year, to here in Denver, and kind of got things started. By the way, my hometown was hit with an F3 the year after I moved. So, ironic there. So I started in the late 90s here in Denver, and Denver is known for two things in the storm chasing community outside of landspouts. Lightning and hail. Had plenty of that to do. So I bought my first car. That's me sitting in the back of it. It was a 1990 Dodge Grand Caravan. I had the choice, honest to God, between it and a Chevy Camaro, and I went with the van. So we already knew I was a nerd, so much so that my license plate at the time said WX Nerd. And I focused primarily on lightning photography. That was the easiest thing for me to do at the time until I kind of got out of high school, got into college, and said, okay, let's gradually work our way out. 2001, first time I took a long distance trip outside of Colorado to chase, and things kind of took off from there. Most of you have no idea what any of this stuff is. When I got it, I had no idea what any of this stuff was, but I needed it. Here we have point and shoot camera. I used an old Canon AE1. This is a mobile ham radio. This is a portable TV. Like, that was one of the ways we got data. But my favorite thing I created was this notebook. This is MapQuest directions on every page that had routes from Denver to major target cities. Omaha, Des Moines, Oklahoma City, Wichita, Amarillo. Down here were the mileages to some of the bigger towns along the way. So I knew exactly how long I had to drive to get to certain points. But the best part, a lot of you guys are so spoiled now. We didn't have mobile data. We had libraries. And I listed every major library on every major route that I looked up, put the address and the directions from that major route to get there, including the hours and the phone number, so we could stop and get data along the way at libraries from Colby, Kansas, North Platte. There were libraries in towns you've never heard of. And we were in so frequently, they would open early for us in the morning. They had our numbers, our cell phones on a little Nokia bricks, and they would say, hey, if you're in town, come in, we'll open up early for you so you can come in and get data. And that was a very cool early experience that set the stage for how all this evolved. And of course, years later, now you have data at your fingertips. And you see me wearing the jersey, and it's not because my team's in the Super Bowl. It will never be in the Super Bowl. But for those of you laughing, when was the last time the Cowboys were in the NFC Championship? I am a Washington fan. I have always been my entire life. And I'm wearing the jersey now because this is where it really started for me. And it started at a conference just like this in Des Moines, Iowa in 2004. It was the Severe Storms and Doppler Radar Conference. First conference I'd ever been to. And I'm going with some of the biggest brains in the country. Weather Channel's going to be there. All the TV stations are going to be in there. And I want to stand out in the crowd so I can point myself out later. And I thought, well, everybody's wearing boring clothes. I'll wear a jersey because it stands out. The problem is nobody's going to see you on TV if you're not there. Because we all ditched the conference, myself, Tim Samaras, Blake Naftel. We ditched this conference to go chasing in Oklahoma on March 27th, 2004. Idiot me only packed jerseys. So I had to wear the jersey on that particular chase. And I did. And we saw 3 tornadoes. And that was super cool. Started off my 2004 season. Art Monk, who's the legendary wide receiver who I had the opportunity to meet when he was inducted in Canton, Ohio. And first words out of my mouth to him were, I wear your jersey storm chasing. And if you want to see a professional football player give you this dumbest look you could ever imagine, that's what you tell him. But I got an opportunity to tell him, and it was super, super cool. Later on, the team actually, my dad and I were at a game, and right at the end of the game, 2-minute warning, was playing Denver in DC. I don't know how this happened. They zoomed right in on my dad and I in the crowd. And we're clear as day. We heard from people we hadn't heard in years. Some dude in a suit comes down a couple of minutes later, and he recognized me from the TV show, and I was wearing the jersey, and he said, it's cool that you're a fan. And they took us up to this Crown Suites, and we got cognac and all sorts of stuff. So super cool. Side note. But it's no coincidence, actually it really is, let's be real, that 2004 was my breakout season. And I wore my jersey on several chases, including May 29th, May 12th. Saw over 20 tornadoes in 2 weeks in May. And I said, all right, I got to wear this jersey forever. I know this picture doesn't show me in the jersey, but oddly enough, I do not have a picture of me in my car during that time. This is a Mercury Tracer. We called it the Storm Trace. And this was my first really fully outfitted chase vehicle. Mesonet on the roof. Well, mesonet, let's call it an anemometer. Let's call it really what it was. More antennas for radios and scanners and TVs, more stuff. I had rabbit ears on this thing because I had a TV I would put in the front seat so I could watch local broadcasts when I was out on the road. Got to pay for this somehow. I was a pizza delivery guy in school. That doesn't offer a whole lot of money at the time. So this knucklehead, Doug Kiesling, who I met at the first Chaser gathering at Tim's basement early on, brought me on as one of his freelance stringers. And for me, it wasn't about making a living. It was about making enough money so I could go out and chase more. The more money I make, the more I could chase. Seemed easy, right? He was instrumental in getting me started because I was able to not only finance the fact I could go out there on my own, but I was able to buy the equipment, get myself better, get myself out more. And in 2004, this is the Conway Springs tornado from May 29, 2004. This was my first ever tornado video I sold to a national network. And I remember it very vividly. Dr. Greg Forbes telestrated over this thing, talking about tornado genesis and multi-vortex structure, and spent a good 2 minutes on that. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, that Storm Master G was using my tornado video to teach people something. And as I mentioned with Doug, this is nothing I did alone. When I got out there back in the early day, there was no social media. There was barely any internet. You had to go out and meet people in the field. And back then, there weren't a ton of folks. So it was easy to pick out when people were chasing storms. So I go out 2003, 2004, and I start running into people. Chris Kalura, who's here today, Amos Maglioso, Scott Kearns, people I would see regularly that I would get up the courage and say, hey, I'm new. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can I chase with you guys? To which they would reply, we don't know what we're doing either. And I said, perfect, we're a great match. And they took me under their wing. And that's a huge part of it because you experience this alone. It's awesome and cool, but you don't learn a whole lot. And then you go out and you understand things that they don't teach you in college. College is a textbook. This is one way you learn it. You go out in the field and you start picking up on nuances, how storm structure works, how everything works. And as I've even found out just in the last 10 years, we're still learning new things about how this stuff all goes on. And it makes what you learned 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago almost seem archaic at times. But I learned so much from these guys. And then my local team, we called ourselves the Colorado Gang. We made a cool little bumper sticker and everything. And Jen Brindley, who's in the audience, John Vandegrift, Tom DeLong, the Carlsons, we all kind of banded together in our own little group, and we would go out all the time and chase. And it made it so much more fun to get out and enjoy this with people. It was early, so a lot of us sucked, and we got to suffer together and enjoy some amazing victories together. And it's the people that matter the most. And these were some of the most important people in my career during the TwistX era. I had known Tim for a few years. Like I said, I went to his first gathering in his basement, and I was in his face constantly. And we talk about networking. This is why you do it. Because this man in this email reached out to me in March of 2007 and said, hey, you're getting all pumped up for this chase opportunity. I'll bait you. How does free chasing sound? Raise your hand if you would take free chasing from somebody you would look up to. So he offers me this on this setup. And I want you all to think for a second. You get this email from somebody you look up to that you've learned about, you've read about, and they're offering you to chase. How quickly are you going to get back and be like answering this guy and be like, yes, of course. I said no. For good reason, no. That particular setup, our Colorado gang, we had made plans to go out and chase this event together. And since I was the one supplying the vehicle, I said, I can't leave them hanging. Fortunately, that setup went to crap. We didn't do it. And then 2 weeks later, the opportunity came about, and I got to start chasing with Tim Samaras. And this is a shot of us. I was reaching for a camera and got this horrible shot. But I love this shot because it shows me looking like a doofus, Tim wondering why the hell he drafted me, me driving his big truck. That's how I learned to drive moving vehicles, because I drove this honking thing for a couple of years. I could speak for hours on him. And when I went out the first time, we were on our way to Nebraska up on I-76. And for the first 45 minutes, I was pucker quiet. What on God's green earth do I say to this man? And I'm driving, and he'd look over and he'd try to make small talk, and I give 1 or 2 word answer. I'm nervous. And I wish there was a more eloquent way to say that the icebreaker was nothing more than a fart. Because I got nervous, and I'm not saying this to be disgusting. I'm saying this because it showed how human he was. I was ready to pull over and walk home. Because I'm like, I just did this in front of him. And he looks over at me, and I'm red, and I'm like, I'm done. This is it. Great career. It was fun. I'm out. And he returned the favor. Mine was louder. I hesitate to tell that story because I think it is gross in its own weird way, but it showed the humanity that he had. And he knew I was nervous, as anybody would be in that situation. And that's immediately how I realized, you know what? This is Tim. This isn't everything that you read in books, this researcher. This was Tim freaking Samaras. And it was the coolest moment. And we started chasing in 2007. The following year, in 2008, TwistX formally came together. 3 Mezzonettes in his probe truck, a whole bunch of us. I saw some Iowa State kids in here. A few of you in here. They were a big part of our project there early on. And again, 81 jersey, as I promised, I would always be in that. We had some good chases in 2008 to start off. We were with National Geographic. They were our primary funding then. And we had a good busy week in May 22nd, with the Windsor tornado. Amazing tornado. We drove under it to Kansas, missed it. It was awesome. I thought, really? What are we doing? Aren't you guys supposed to be smart? Like, whatever. But I want to show, I do have a couple of videos. This is the Tipton, Kansas, May 29, 2008. This was our first full successful probe and Mesonet deployment. My longtime storm chase partner and good friend Ed Grubb was in the passenger seat with me when we chased this tornado. And I got some fun tidbits on this here at the end of the video. I don't believe there's sound. That's fine. I don't need sound. So this was coming up as we made the approach. Hard to see, but you can kind of see the funnel in here. We parked about 200 yards to the south. And this was super exciting for us. None of us had ever been this close to a tornado before. And we're cool and calm. That's the only regret I don't have the sound. You don't hear us screaming. Hold that thought. So tornado's coming across the road. You see this vehicle right here? How many folks remember in Storm Chasers read Timmer's, "Back up"? You remember that line? That's who he's yelling at. That's who he's yelling at. So I will say we were closer than Reed on this tornado. That went a tractor tire that went across the street. We were, like I said, about 200 yards from this. You don't see it in the video. I will show it here in a minute. Tim had his video probe, his 360-degree video probe, on the street just up the road from us. So we'll radio to him and say, "Hey, Tim, here's the probe." This was the video from his probe. This is state-of-the-art stuff back in the day. And this was the tornado making its approach. Weak tornado, but he had a 360 degrees of cameras inside one of his turtle probes. And this was the video he captured as he was north of the tornado. We were down to the south. And this was super exciting. You know, this was with National Geographic. It was our first big tornado intercept. And this was such a huge moment for us. Our Mesonet, a white cobalt, we called Tidy Whitey, because at most points during our mission, there were 4 of us in this car with all of our gear. That's me with giant hail that I tried really hard not to drive the Mesonet into because it had a sunroof. And I saved the sunroof, believe it or not. But our job in the Mesonet was to take measurements of the RFD region of a supercell, whether or not that had a tornado or not. But if there was, we would be tasked with getting as close to the tornado as safety permitted to take measurements. The other 2 Mesonets would surround the tornado in different areas, so we'd have multiple data points around this region. And while not always intentional, it was usually us that would be the closest to the tornadoes. This shot from Paul Samaras on the Canton tornado in 2011, while he was hanging out the back window with Ed Grubb holding him by the belt buckle as he was taking pictures, and this was one of the more iconic shots of that day. Paul's photography was disgusting. we would, obviously after a chase, we'd be showing off our cameras. Ed and I would be super excited at the shots we got. And Paul's like, mine's okay. And then he would show us and we'd just throw our cameras out the window. Like, why are we even trying? His work was phenomenal. And it was such an honor to have him in the back seat because he captured so many great moments. And this was one of those just incredible shots as we were making an intercept to that. 2009, Storm Chasers. I call us the B team to the A team. We were part of Team Twistex, and again, they followed us around, stuck cameras in our faces. It was a very unique experience. And the first season, 2009, was season 3, and it was a whole lot of fun. The crew was amazing. They let us do our thing. We had a great crew, still friends with a lot of them today. And they went out and just did this phenomenal job of telling our story, our science mission, what we were out there trying to do. And we were on there for 3 seasons, and I would say that each season got progressively different, as the case in TV. But we had a ton of great intercepts. These are just a few of the big dates out there. Quinter, Kansas was a phenomenal day for us. Obviously, Tipton, Kirksville, Missouri, we had a great intercept. Lagrange, one of the most researched tornadoes in history. Aurora, Meadow, Wadena, the super outbreak in 2011. I hate chasing the Southeast. Canton, Oklahoma. I would argue our best one was Bodle. Who here chased Bodle? This was just some highlights from this day. This was us early on in the chase. Ed Grubb, Carl Young, some of the Iowa State students. This was our view of the tornadoes. We were just on the north side of Bodle. We were making our mesonet intercept. Tim came up. He was doing his thing prior as the tornado formed. This was his tower probe. This was new for us this year. He did a turtle probe that measured wind at 3 different levels, one at the surface, one at 1 meter, one at 2 meters. And he successfully deployed this in the early stages of Bodle. This is video from Matt Grish, who was in their vehicle, of them loading this thing up after the Bodle tornado ran it over. Prior to that, the day before, Ed Grubb and I had to run to Denver to get the replacement data log that he put in at like 3 in the morning that night to get this measured. This was one of the transmission towers that came down as this tornado was off to our north. This tornado was rated a strong EF4, arguably probably EF5 strength. And we saw about 6 or 7 other tornadoes that day. It was a phenomenal day for those that were out there. Remember, this thing just paralleled a major highway, and we basically go up to the next major highway, go north, measure the next tornado, and we just did it again multiple times. 2011 was our final year with Twistex, our final year with Discovery Channel. This was an interesting year. Discovery Channel started to lean a little bit more into the drama. If you remember the last season of Storm Chasers, there was a lot of drama. And we were not immune to that. Our producing team was very animate on making sure there was drama. We'd been chasing with them for 5 years. Never once did a mesonet fly off the roof. Happened that season. Weird. And one of the issues they had with us, that year we had acquired a radar truck. And that prevented us from core punching storms to get in position for tornadoes. So we missed a lot of tornadoes that year. And that was angering a lot of members of the team because we were constantly behind. And the show wanted me to break off, go rogue to get tornadoes, and I refused to do it. So if you remember the opening credits of the last season, you see me as part of the team, but I never appear in an episode because the producers could not find stories for me. One of the odd things, and I get to tell this story because very few people will get this. There was an episode where Reed Timmer is acting out looking at a tornado that he was not at. It was my video that he was doing. Be careful when you watch reality TV. This, unfortunately, was kind of a bad ending to our run with Discovery. There was a lot of focus on the drama. There was a lot of focus on just a lot of the nuances that we had no interest in. Our mission was science. And amazingly, despite the editing, I thought we did as good a job as we could as a team to positively portray the work that we were doing out there. And I think despite what they did with us, we did a very, very good job. But this, Pleasanton, June 20th, 2011, was the last tornado we would see as a team with Twistex, and us loading his probe there one final time. And I got to give a shout out to the best after party in the history of after parties. This was the Applebee's in Columbus, Nebraska. I'm 90% sure they still talk about this. We closed this. Sean Casey was there. I don't know if Reed was there. Tim was there. Obviously, all the crews. We all convened on this thing. And I mean, we just burned this place to the ground. It was a fantastic late memory to just everybody let loose after just an incredible season, after an incredible stint. This day sucks. And I wish there was a more eloquent way to say it. I hate that we have to talk about this when we talk about the history of storm chasing. This was May 31st, 2013. This was my view of the El Reno tornado. I was south of it. When the tornado initially touched down, I was sitting at a house just south of the airport, the El Reno airport, in its big carousel phase. And my visibility wasn't great. The contrast was kind of hit or miss. And once the contrast really got bad and I could no longer see what was going on, I'm like, I got to get south because I don't know what's going on anymore. This was the first day I had ever live streamed a chase from start to finish. And I went into this day with just the weirdest feeling. And the folks who saw me, Skip Talbot, Jen Brindley, for instance, they will tell you how ominous I felt about this day. It just wasn't sitting right with me. And when I got south, I was super calm. I had no idea the danger I was in. And the home that I left 45 seconds later got absolutely leveled. And I had no idea. And this was the best and only shot I got of this day. And of course, it didn't take long before we heard what happened to the Weather Channel. Hundreds of other, you talk to any chaser that day, the harrowing experiences that everybody had out there. And it was just mind-boggling to me. And we all were like, okay, big mistakes all across the board. And it wouldn't be till about 2 days later. And I pray none of you ever have to get these phone calls. I heard from a couple of sources, and it was unconfirmed at the time, as rumors often start. And I stayed up that entire night holding out hope that it wasn't true. And then I saw the picture of the car, the same car that Ed and I drove for 3 years. And I knew it was true. And that sucked. And it still sucks. And you don't know what to do with that. It brings a lot of question. It brings a lot of reflection. How do you move forward from something like this? And I think every chaser, whether they were out on that day, whether they were active, whether they were learning about it, everybody took a step back. Not only as to what it meant for chasing, but what it meant for them. And I had spent a lot of time with Tim. This picture was taken by Jen Brindley at my wedding. And this sums up so beautifully what he was to me in so many aspects. Him, Paul, Carl. And it was hard to wrap your head around what had happened. Tim, Paul, Carl, some of the safest, most intelligent, most critical, smartest people. How did this happen to them? I knew, and most of us did, that this was not going to end our chasing careers. That's not what they would have wanted. It's not what I would have wanted. But I had to figure out how I go forward. Well, for most of my journey, I'd been freelancing. I did 12 years delivering pizzas. Missed that job sometimes. But I was meteorologist Tony Laubach, and I had been for 4 years. I graduated in 2009. Folks, I started in 2000. You've heard a lot of people talking about the importance of education and wanting to follow your dreams. All my life, I wanted to be meteorologist Tony Laubach. But I am an idiot when it comes to math and science. I'm an idiot when it comes to a lot of things. But I'm an idiot when it comes to the math and science. I took 9 years. I started at pre-algebra, and I worked my way up, taking some of these classes 2 and 3 times over again. And the saying is, C's get degrees. I am the walking definition of that. All I wanted was this piece of paper. And in 2009, I got it. And this picture was after the Kirksville chase. The day after I took my last final, Ed Grubb was sitting in a parking lot. I got out in his car. We drove out, and the next day we chased Kirksville. And as my graduation present, everybody wore my jersey. You'll remember that Storm Chaser episode. It wasn't in there, but that was why we did that. It was my graduation present from the guys. This was my first chase as meteorologist Tony Laubach. While I was in school, I interned. And there's a gentleman some of you may know, the legend himself, Mr. Mike Nelson. When we talk about mentors, he was getting me ready for the foundation of a professional career I had absolutely no idea I was going to have. I was his weather producer. I was responsible for generating graphics, the master cities list that I had to put the highs and lows for 100 freaking towns every day I was in. Thank God that's automated now. But that was the stuff I did on the side. But I also produced packages for them on occasion. I did chasing for them, obviously. He offered me on multiple occasions, hey, do you want to do TV weather? Hell no. I did not go to school to be a TV weatherman. I had no interest, never got in front of the green screen. I said, I'm not. But all the things he talks about, everything he kind of set up under that got me into this foundation. In 2013, prior to El Reno, my wife and I moved to Southern Illinois, and she got a offer to get a free master's at Southern Illinois University, and we wanted to get the hell out of Colorado. We really did. It was expensive. It was overpriced. Neither of us had family at the point. It was like, let's go. So I reached out to the station there back in March and said, hey, I'm coming out. I got some background experience. And they were like, we got nothing for you. End of story. I thought, okay, whatever. So I did my chasing season. El Reno happened, and I got back and was kind of recovering from that. I decided I would apply. What else am I going to do out there? And I got a master's, not in meteorology. Hell no. No. Not doing that. I got a master's in media. But suddenly the station I reached out to posted a job opening for a weather warrior. And amazingly, the job credentials were my resume. So that was odd. So I applied, got the job, and became the weather warrior for WSIL TV. And obviously, there's not always weather to chase. So I started doing some photography. Was a sports photog. That was a blast. But my news director was super cool. And he says, if you want, you can go out for 8 weeks, completely paid for, create a weekly series. And for 2 years, in 2015, 2016, I would go out, and every week I'd beam back a package of what it was like to storm chase out in the plains. Was nominated for several awards, never won any. But it was an opportunity for me to storytell in a manner I'd never done before. And of course, I was produced, for the weather, worked in the weather center, helped out with big storm events. And they too were like, hey, you want to do weather? I'm like, no, everybody quit asking me that. I don't want to do TV weather. I want to go storm chase. And that's what I did until 2016. I had a cool opportunity. In summer of 2016, one of our Mets was taking paternity leave, so there was a 6-week window. And they were like, hey, look, you know the system. You've been working here. We don't really have to train you. Do it for 6 weeks. If you hate it, you never have to do it again. I'm like, all right, fine. Let me keep the goatee. Let me wear Snoopy ties. They agreed to both. And people really enjoyed my weather reports. And I found it wasn't so bad because I had no formal training. I got to go up in front of this camera and be myself, be the goofy dude wearing super bright shirts and Snoopy ties, and I had a good time. I was like, this isn't so bad. So I took the full-time weekend job the following year and basically became the weekend morning meteorologist. Well, as you find out in your career, you build on it and things open up. And in 2018, there was a job opening in Wichita, Kansas. And that was my wife's and I's destination place. We wanted to go to Kansas. Me, everybody, take a guess why. So I got hired at Cake TV in Wichita as a weekend broadcast Met, and of course, Kansas's only full-time storm chasing meteorologist. But best of all, I was in the heart of Tornado Alley during the slowest 2 tornado seasons on record. I know you can't see it, and you can look on there. There's a map with all the purple. You see the big white there in Wichita? That was 0 tornadoes in 2020. Now, we were all under quarantine in COVID. So was Mother Nature, thank God. But this was ridiculous, I thought. TV, my time at WSIL was in the tail end of what I would consider the golden age of local TV. It was a mom-pop owned place, not a big corporation. TV's brutal. It really is. I signed a 3-year deal. I had a great time, but the schedule was killing me. I was doing weekend morning weather. I would chase in the evening. I would come back and do weekend morning weather. Management at the time didn't get it. There was a lot of things that factored in. I was paid very well, arguably probably one of the top paid weekend Mets in the country at the time. But I was broken. I was exhausted. I wasn't happy. So with no safety net, in 2021, I said, I can't do this anymore. I got to step away. What the heck am I going to do next? I didn't want to move. My wife and I had moved every 2 years. No matter where we were. In Denver, we moved every 2 years. In Illinois, we were there for 5 years. We moved 3 times. Wichita, we moved out, and then we finally bought a house. I said, I am staying in this house. I bought this house. I'm not moving again. Well, there's a company in Wichita, based out of Wichita, AccuWeather. And they had a job for a severe weather forecast that was on their site. And I talked to some TV stations, around the area. I was like, obviously, if the right thing came up, we would go, but I really wanted to stay local. So a couple of days after I saw that ad, I said, I'm going to apply for that job. It's not really what I want to do, but I got to work. Well, it turns out a new job got listed, and it was a remote position for a weather reporter. And I thought, that's perfect. I could be remote here in Wichita. They got an office in Wichita. I'm not going to have to move. I applied. They hired. And the first question out of their mouth is, will you go to Colorado? Fine. So they said, be within an hour of the airport. You can move wherever you want. So I'm like, cool. We don't have to go back to Denver. So we moved to northern Colorado. And in May of 2021, we came back home. Again, May. We moved in the middle of tornado season. That's not what I would recommend. The day we left Wichita to drive to Kansas or drive to Colorado was on a 5%. I had 3 cats in my car. My wife had 2. It was loaded with stuff. My cat wanted to go. My wife said, if you do this, I'm killing you. And we drove on I-70 with 2 tornadic supercells on either side of us on that trip in. Didn't see any tornadoes that day. But we had to get in because the house that we made an offer on, we hadn't seen yet. And if you guys are aware of Colorado in 2021, the housing market was just insane. So we made an offer sight unseen. Our realtor was awesome, said, hey, if you can get out here tonight, we can look at it, and you can get out if you don't want it. So we raced past all these tornadoes, killed me. We got in, we got to see the house, and said, cool. So we lived for 2 weeks in a hotel with 5 cats. This is me with 5 cats in our hotel bed. My realtor, Sarah, did an amazing job. She got us a 21-day close. So we just had to survive this for 2 weeks. Closing day. Thank God. Hadn't formally started with AccuWeather yet. Morning, that pod gets dropped off in the driveway, and we sold everything in Wichita. Anything we could fit in the pod, we did. Anything we couldn't fit in the pod, we sold. And I had 2 goals after closing. We had an afternoon closing. So I want to get there, and I want to set up the bedroom because I want to spend the night in my new house. And I wanted to get everything out of the pod into the garage because the following day they were going to pick up the pod. And if we weren't ready, they were going to charge us an extra month, and we didn't want to pay for that. So we get the keys. We go to the house. Mattress was the last thing we loaded up. It was the first thing, and it was a pain in the ass to load in there. So we expected this to take a 45-minute deal, and it just slipped right out. So, oh, thank God. So we're getting the mattress situated, and I hear that from my wife's mouth. When you look up stupid human face in the dictionary, that is the look I was giving at that moment. So I stop and I turn around, and the answer is no. It was a funnel. But that's cool, right? We all have made life decisions where I'm sure we've prayed to our higher power saying, please give me a sign I did the right thing. I was as exhausted as a person could be, emotionally, physically, mentally, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this new job, moving to Colorado. I needed that right there. And that is what I got. And I watched it for a couple minutes, and I took in the moment because for me, this was an important piece for me to say, you made the right decision. Funnel started to kind of, no debris. It's like, cool, let's get back to it. So we start to load the mattress. There's a couple of stairs that lead to the front door. So we go in to get the mattress up the stairs, and I felt this little tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and I see the dust column coming up from behind the houses. In 5 seconds, me, my wife, and my mattress were all the way into the house. And before the mattress could hit the floor, we were back in the car. My wife was like, we got to close everything. Dude, the neighborhood could have cleaned us out. I didn't care. We drove 500 yards to get out of the neighborhood, and that was the view we had. Here's your sign. I'm not going to get into a ton of meteorology because, again, I'm a C student. You've heard talks about high base storms. 1750, 2,000 meters is about as high as a tornado's going to reach. This freaking base was 3,300 meters off the ground. This tornado was seen by folks in southeast Denver, 50 plus miles away. Clear as day. There was no meteorology textbook that said this would have happened. So for those of you who saw this tornado, you're freaking welcome. This land spout, which as you know are brief, lasted 30 freaking minutes. To the point where 90 minutes after we closed and we got the tornado, 2 hours later, we were still taking pictures of this thing. It was a moment that still chokes me up in a weird way. It's the only tornado I've ever cried over. Called my mom, called Ed, and said, this is cool. So the following day, my wife and I made my AccuWeather debut on our back deck, talking about our viral encounter with the tornado the day we moved in. First question they asked was, were you insured at that point? And I said, yes, but the tornado was close. Bad news was, a week later, we had a hailstorm total the roof. AccuWeather for me has been the culmination of my entire career. Everything I built, starting with Mike Nelson all the way up to here. This has been my dream job. I have been able to chase my brains out all across the country. I got my first hurricanes. I think all of us have that on our bucket list. I never was into it. I chased my first hurricanes. I still don't get it. I don't understand why y'all do it. For those wondering what it's like, go home, sit in your dishwasher for 6 hours. Bring a GoPro in because you probably could pass off the video as a nighttime hurricane because that's what it looks like. I don't get it. And I've done about a dozen of them now. I only do it for work. It's not my thing, but that's cool. Money's good. I'm sure that has something to do with it. But I've been able to cover all sorts of other major events. The Marshall Fire I was in. We covered the fires in Los Angeles, obviously plenty of hurricanes. I've done blizzards. I got the opportunity the first year I was with them to go back to my hometown, place I grew up, and report on our annual pumpkin festival that we held every October. That was a huge full circle moment for me. And then came 2023. This was my best season. I am not a 365 chaser. So these numbers are kind of small compared to what a lot of folks do nowadays, but all of these were number ones. 42,000 plus miles, 62 logs, 50 tornadoes, 17 different days I saw tornadoes, chased 1,000 miles 11 different times and chased in over 20 different states. Now, there's one person in here who's going to raise their hand for this. Who was here on Akron? Yeah! Who was here in Chugwater? This was the stupidest day in the history of stupid days. 19 tornadoes I saw, and I still missed 8 others that this supercell produced. That's how insane. Then this is a trio. We've got the big one, the satellite, and then this little doohickey behind it. And this was the video of that event. This day and age, it's so difficult to be on an event of this caliber seemingly by yourself. And to be the closest. Like they've got my car in their shots. And I was about 200 yards watching this thing, and I knew that this was it. What I did not know was his little baby brother was going to be out. Hello. And I'm watching this in real time. I've got my cell phone I'm taking video with in one hand. I'm shooting the living daylights out of my Nikon with the other. And I'm not paying attention to either because I'm watching this unfold in front of me. And it's a testament to the longevity of the career because 2023, 25 years, I am still just jaw-dropped over what I'm watching. This is the best thing I've ever seen. And I knew it. This was it. This was going to be my event. And this thing comes whipping around. Nobody around. No, I had no idea Justin and Simon were anywhere close. And I ran into him at a gas station early on, so I pray I run into him on every single chase now. But watch what happens up here. Watch this thing. It's like, hey, you want to come and join me? Sure. And then it just creates this little horizontal funnel, and it just brings it in. That was insane. And this year I'm super excited because I started chasing in 1997 and I've chased every year. This year will be my 30th season storm chasing. This will be my 5th year with AccuWeather, and we've got a lot of cool things planned. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of look backs and what have you. So stay tuned for that. One thing too, I've started in the last couple of years. I had a website all the way back to GeoCities days. But like most people, websites kind of fell out of fashion. I let mine die, let my domain expire, and the website disappeared. Well, instead of buying a sports car for my midlife crisis, I decided I wanted to bring back the website because I had a conversation with several old folks like me, and we were talking about how legacy storm chase sites are gone. You can't go and find a lot of these old chases anymore because they just don't exist in any capacity. So I thought, I'm going to revamp my website, tonylaubach.net. I learned coding, learned WordPress all from scratch, and I've been designing it, still working on it to this day. It's a one-man project. I got a lot of stuff. But I am attempting to get the legacy chase site back up and running. One of the things I'm doing this year, and I'm hoping for anyway, is my quest for 500 tornadoes. I'm at 474. And if you want proof, go to my website. I have a list of all 474 tornadoes. And I had fun coding. This is where like the coding and learning gets fun. You can filter all my tornadoes by day of the week, month of the week, year, who I saw it with, all of that, and it'll go through and list it. 424 of them, I believe, have pictures at some point during that tornado's life. So it's legit. I'm not making up numbers. So I'm hoping this year I can hit 500. That would be really cool, I think, for me to do in my 30th season. And it's funny when you look at a lot of folks chasing nowadays, how quickly they are doing in 5 or 10 years that it took me 30 years to do. You build a long career in this by taking your time. This is going to be a random right field question, but who here plays Pokemon Go? Oh, okay. Think about for a second, like when new stuff comes out, you want to hurry through and do all this stuff as quickly as you can. And I think we're seeing that a lot with folks that go out and chase. They chase 365 days a year. They chase every single thing. They got some great stuff. But I'm going to tell you from experience, you're going to get burned out. In 2024, I was not having my best year. I was coming off 2023, and I was burning the candle at both ends for an employer. And I'm lucky because my company is amazing. One random day in May, after just a series of bad days, I burnt out 2 hours before we were going to go live with a moderate risk in Southern Illinois, and I called them and said, I can't. I gotta take a break. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that my entire career. My main chase season is March through June. Obviously AccuWeather opens the door to get out more year round, but I still say no. I still take that break. I still allow myself that opportunity. You're not going to make it 30 years in a career going nonstop. And I think that was the culminate for me when I left my station in Wichita. I wanted to keep doing this, but I knew if I kept going at that pace, I was going to burn myself out. And I needed to step away from that. And of course, it opened the door to arguably one of the better jobs that I've had in my professional career. I love what I do. It's the only thing I know how to do. I'm terrified to think what I'm going to do after this. Certainly isn't going to be modeling or Instagram model or anything like that. I have lost some weight. I would say to everybody out there right now who chases, both the youngsters, there are a lot of young kids in here, and you heard my college story, stay with it. I know 9 years isn't the most feasible route to go, but if you want it, stick with it. But pace yourself. There is more to life than chasing. And like most of the young people now, I took a while to learn that. And I missed graduations, I missed birthdays, I missed a lot of things. Do I regret some of it? Yeah. But what I don't regret is the storm days I have missed. Not because I screwed up in the field, but because I stayed home. I missed the Campos, the Benningtons. I've missed a lot of big days, and they suck when you do. But you're going to see plenty. Akron was a testament to that. 25 years, and I had my best chase day. Heck, even 2025, I was one good chase away from probably saying it was my best chase. I had Morton, I had all that good stuff. The only reason it left a sour taste in my mouth is because I was not up north, where I really wanted to be. I'm going to wrap up here. Go full circle. 1996, my sophomore year. I had a life planning class with my teacher, Miss Happening, in second period of Circleville High School. We had to write a career plan of what we wanted to do with our lives. My top lines: after I finish high school, I plan to attend a 4-year college and major in meteorology. After college, I hope to begin a long career in the field of storm chasing in the Great Plains of the United States. If time travel were a thing, how cool it is to think I could go back to my sophomore self, look him in the eye and say, "You did it, kid. Thank you." I got 7 minutes. Any questions? Shoot.
Do you still wear your jersey chasing?
Do I still wear my jersey chasing? The answer, unfortunately, is no. As I got into professional settings, I had to wear more uniform stuff. Actually, funny story I missed. So obviously, the first season was Discovery Channel. I wore the jersey. The NFL Players Association didn't like that. And after the Kirksville, all of us in the jersey, there was a little trouble. I know it was a big fine. Oops. So they had me switch to other outfits. Fortunately, my high school thought it was real cool. I was on TV, so they sent me a bunch of clothes, and I wore that. But every now and again, I'll sneak it on, usually for a local chase. But because of all the TV and everything I do, I don't wear it as much anymore. Anybody else? I think there's a hand back there. Did I frame what?
Jersey.
Which one? Actually, I left that at the Twist-X Memorial. And it fell victim to the sands of time, unfortunately, but that was where the original jersey ended up. So I bought our team in 2010 jerseys with the numbers of the date of everybody's favorite chase. Tim's obviously was June 24th, 2003, so I got him a number 24 Redskins jersey that all of us on the team signed and gave to him as a gift at the end of that season. Obviously, after he passed, I got that back, and that sits at home. Maybe I probably ought to frame that. That would be kind of fun. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
If you could go back and do any case with Ed Samaras, Paul Samaras, or Carl Young, what would be your most memorable, or what would be a memory you could teach others about?
You would think after this amount of time I would know the answer to that. The humility. I think, we talk about the competitiveness and everything that kind of goes on to chasing. Tim would hand over his research to anybody who wanted it without a second thought to it. And it was his humility, because he didn't want the glory of everything he was doing. He wanted the answers. And for you kids on the Otis Project, he would be so proud of the work you're doing. I see his fingerprints all over that research. And I'd like to think that anybody moving forward at this point has a little Tim in him. Carl was Hollywood. He loved the big screen. He loved the attention. He was so energetic. His favorite thing was chasing for nuggets. I can't tell you how many times he'd come banging on our door at 4 a.m. and say, "There's a setup 800 miles away." And we'd drive it. And he was only right about 25% of the time. But he had a few good ones. Bodil was part of his. He got us up in the morning for that. And Paul, his art was amazing. Like I said, we would throw our cameras out the window and he would just casually He was so quiet. So quiet, you wouldn't even know. We were at a gas station on some random chase. I don't remember what. We filled up with gas. We took off. We got about 7 miles down the road. Ed and I turn around. We get on the radio. "Tim, we got to go back to the gas station. We forgot something." And he asked, "What?" "Your son." We left him. He went in to go to the bathroom. We didn't even know, and we left. We had to go back and get him. So that happened. They were great friends. They helped me move multiple times. I lived right down the street from Tim when we started chasing together. I'm sure that helped a lot, but it's kind of like I said in the panel, you gotta be in the moments when you're out with your people, because you don't know. I know I focused a lot on the guys, but I've got many friends who I've lost over the years that I went out and did this with quite regularly. And I wish I had more pictures. I wish I had more video, because the memories do get harder as you get older. And I think that's one of the things that grows the gray in my beard more than anything else. And I don't mean to sound so downtrodden, but remember these moments, the people you go out with and the experiences you get. The tornadoes are great. But that chase where we left Paul at the gas station, great story. The storm sucked, but it's a great story. And that's what matters the most, I think. I know that doesn't fully answer your question as good as I can do, I think.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Tony,
Yes, Mike?
first of all, I'm so proud to play that minor role, and I'm so proud of you.
Modest. He was such a huge role.
But would you regale us with the great story of the rental car and the Texas wedding?
My father decided to get married in May in Midland, Texas. And it was 2006. My van was in the shop, so I had to rent a vehicle. Well, the guy was like, "Hey, we'll give you the damage waiver for $12. I said, "Sure. What's the worst that could happen?" Texas in May. Mike loves this story. So I'm on my way down, day before the wedding, storm in Texas. Naturally, I'm going to chase. I had no data. I had no idea what was going on. And I'm on the storm, and it's great. It starts, hailing a little bit. I'm like, it's damage waiver, A few quarters ain't going to kill it. Quarters became ping pongs. Ping pongs became golf balls. Golf balls became baseballs. Baseballs became softballs. Every window was gone. To the point where we had to leave it at the police station. I had to jump in with a friend to finish the chase because I couldn't drive out of the thing anymore. So I drive it to Midland that night. I roll into the rental car place. The agent, cute little girl, comes out, looks at the car, and just loses her face. She's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." She goes, "Well, what did you do when all that was going on?" I said, "Well, what do you think I did?" I said, "I shot video, sold it to every major network. Here are the keys. Can I get another car?" For the record, that was the worst I'd ever totaled a car until last year. Amazingly, I've only done this twice in 30 years, but I totaled my other car in a 80-mile-an-hour wind-driven softballs back in April last year on the north side of the widest tornado in the history of Iowa. Of course, it would be Iowa that would do that. I didn't talk about my Iowa curse. That I need some beers for. I saw one more hand back there somewhere. Go ahead. What coping mechanism? A bad one? I think it's hard for me to say because I think so much of it comes with age. You cope with so much just because of the experiences that you have, and you understand that things are going to happen. And depending on the situation, miss chase, you lose people, you have to find your way, I guess. Coping with missed chases sucked when I was a kid, but now it's easy. I've seen so much great stuff. I'm going to miss stuff. I'm going to miss stuff all the time. And it sucks for the moment, but what I miss, I don't see at home. What I see at home is Pilger hanging on my wall or Akron hanging on my wall. Those are the memories and the coping mechanisms for that. There is no easy answer. I think you want to do the best you can in memory of your people because their legacy lives through you.
Are there any other incidents?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Have you abandoned your kids? Is there any other instance that you've abandoned your kids on a chase?
Wait, in my kids?
Yeah.
I don't have kids. I did that on purpose. I've never taken a cat on a chase either. I tried, but my wife told me no. So. We saw Highlands Ranch from a distance. We weren't up close. That was kind of a diffuse tornado. Because obviously it was Akron, Highlands Ranch, and then the Chugwater everybody hoped would be the Akron day. That finally happened. So those were all three back to back. They probably unhooked it. Again, we have no proof. I'm just telling you what I thought. I'll leave it at that. I'm off my non-compete, so I can talk about that.
What's your favorite chase?
Eastern Colorado. Look, I've chased a lot of places. The Southeast sucks. If I never have to go back there again, I won't. But I mean, Eastern Colorado is my adult home. It's my meteorological home. It took me 1,000,000 years to see a legit tornado there. But Akron was great. I saw 19 tornadoes, and I was back in time for the first pitch of the Rockies game. How many places can you say that? Pray to God we get some snow to moisten things up a little bit. We'll see. Anything else? One more. I'm going to screw up the date. March 28th, 07. That was the big High Plains outbreak. I think it was the date. My teacher, I don't know if Sam Ming's here. He was a Metro professor at the time. I was a horrible student. I know that now. But he threatened to fail me if I ditched this class to go chase. And I would do it again because I failed half the classes I failed anyway, and I had to retake them. So it would have been worth an extra semester for that one. But that one has always stuck with me more than any others. Like Simla, I left Lyman to chase Kansas, so I missed that one. I could have stayed in the parking lot there the entire day seeing that. Bennington, same thing. I was in Salina, drove. West Kansas is the theme for all my screw-up days. So maybe I don't like West Kansas as much as I used to. But that's it. I'm out.